The gingerfish is here for a mighty, mighty verse.
The almighty goat is here to rule this land.
Goat versus fish.
The goat is in the house.
In the beginning, there was goat versus fish. The GoatVsFish. And goat versus fish said that there should be goat and that there should be fish. There is no alpha or omega. There is no black or white. There is no good or evil. There is only goat.
Here is the goat, the almighty goat, the ruler of this land here in West Los Angeles.
And fish.
The all-powerful gingerfish has arrived to verse on this glorious day.
And goat versus fish. You have many questions, yes. Who is goat versus fish? What is goat versus fish? Why is goat versus fish? But there is only one question. Are you goat? Or are you fish? This Goat versus Fish podcast, this versus of goat and fish, is at a place where the land meets the sea. It is a place that is called Venice. Let us celebrate Venice. Celebration for Venice. Celebration. It is the sound of the goat. It is the sound of the goat and the fish. Fish, tell us of your sound of fish.
It is the mighty, mighty fish noise that only fish truly understand, which is why we are the all-powerful in the verse.
What do you say to this goat? This goat, can it comprehend the fish? Can it comprehend the fish?
This goat eats this fish for lunch here in Venice. The delicious fish will be my main course.
And an opening classic verses of consumption, a classic verses of consumption, as the fish is busy with its sound of the fish, claiming that the goat cannot comprehend it. What verses does it matter, fish, if this goat will simply come to consume the fish?
Many fish are not healthy to eat, and if he wants to take a chance on the rare gingerfish, he will learn the wrath of all fish, the school of fish, the mighty verse of fish.
And the gingerfish dared the goat to consume the fish. Dared the goat to consume the fish. What do you say, goat? What do you say, goat?
I say I don't need to consume the fish. I could just maul him with my mighty horns and be away with him.
Changing verses. The tactical goat brings the horn of the goat to the verses to maul the fish. Ooh, it looks like a mighty verses. But come. Let us know this goat and fish. Fish. What is the name of this fish?
This fish is Kraft, the gingerfish.
Kraft, the gingerfish. We celebrate this fish.
Gingerfish for verse.
And what is the name of this goat? What is the name of this goat that the ones are calling this goat when they do not realize yet that it is a goat that is versus fish?
Yes. This is Eric, the goat Alegria. The mightiest goat on this earth.
The mightiest goat on this place of verses. Make some noise for the Alegrious goat,
Bah. Bah. The mighty cry of the goat drives fear into all the fishes over there in the Pacific Ocean. They hear me loud and clear.
Now, goat and fish. You have come here to be part of Goat vs. Fish, but you have also, goat and fish alike, welcomed Goat vs. Fish to your place of verses, to speak and to spread the verses of Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish is, of course, pleased, but there are some who are confused by Goat vs. Fish and are not so welcoming to Goat vs. Fish. Fish. Why is it that you welcome Goat vs. Fish to speak at your places? These comedy places, yes? Tell us of your verses, Fish.
My verse is called Ugly Stepchildren at West Side Comedy Theater the first Saturday of every month. We recently welcomed Goat vs. Fish to spread the word because Ugly Stepchildren is about welcoming all. Goat vs. Fish, even goat, is welcome at Ugly Stepchildren.
And what did you think of the verses of Goat vs. Fish? How did the ones perceive Goat vs. Fish?
It was all powerful. The goat and fish in the audience really embraced their newfound verses and have been forever changed by Goat vs. Fish.
Alegria's goat.
Yes, yes.
You also has welcomed Goat vs. Fish. Many verses, many verses. Tell us of your comedic verses.
Ah, yes. Well, we run a great comedy show in North Hollywood at the Scene. The first Wednesday of every month. The third Wednesday of every month. And also the Foxfire, where the goat runs and rules his jokes over the audience. Ah, yes. It's a glorious night in the Valley of San Fernando.
The Valley of the Goat.
Of course. The Valley of the Goats rules with his best dig jokes the land has ever heard.
And how do they perceive Goat vs. Fish? The ones that you bring to audience for Goat vs. Fish. How do they perceive Goat vs. Fish?
Well, at first, they don't know what to do with Goat vs. Fish. There are some people that are all about the goat and the fish, and there's other people that are on the fence, and they don't know whether they like the goat and the fish, or they do not like him.
Fence sitters, boo the fence sitter, boo the fence sitter!
Oh. You must decide, goat or fish. No fence sitting.
No fence sitting. You need to pick a side. Are you the goat? Are you the fish? But you shouldn't be the fence.
Not on the fence, not this verses. This is Goat vs. Fish, Goat vs. Fish. When we last left the verses, it was the mighty horn of the goat. That was coming to maul the fish. Fish backed by the very sea of the fish. How do you respond to these verses?
The mighty ginger fish will call upon his school of fish to help create a barrier and show the goat the true power of a school of fish ram, just like the goat rams. But it's all powerful because the ginger fish is the strongest fish there is. Versus be this day.
The powerful ginger fish, backed by the many Pacific fish, comes to the goat and says, "You think you can ram the fish? Well, the fish can ram the goat, backed by many fish." Goat, how do you respond to these verses?
Well, I've heard this many times before. But the goat is a mighty warrior, and he's been through many wars and battles, and he knows what to do. When you go right, he goes right. When you go left, he goes left. When you go down, he goes down. And he will find you, and he will get you with his mighty horns.
My school of fish will dehorn this mighty ram, goat.
Yes, the rams. Speaking of the rams. Which of course we know that they are goat. Yes, we know that they are goat.
Yes.
Now the verses, speaking of those verses of the N false versus L, the N false versus L, the National League of Fence Sitters, so many hawks and what do they call them now? Yes, they are calling it the Patriots now.
Yeah.
Yes, and the Bears, yes. But there is the Rams.
Yes.
And the Rams do have the horn of the goat. They must be goat. And now this place of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Goats, go Goats. They are going to the Super Bowl. What do you say, goat? What do you say, goat, knowing that your goats are going to the Super Bowl?
It does not surprise me that they are going to the highest game possible in this universe and show their talents to the rest of the world and show them what the almighty Rams can do to the Patriots.
The goats, yes, the goats.
The goats!
The goats, the goats. Now fish. Are you a fish? Are you a fish of Los Angeles, fish?
My fish origin is actually St. Louis, Missouri, and the Los Angeles goats followed me out here, and now, with the power of the ginger fish, are headed to the Super Bowl.
Ah, you say it is the power of the fish that brings the goats to the Super Bowl?
Yes, because the fish will it.
Ah, the fish will it. So you will be celebrating for those goat to triumph the Fence Italy Patriots that do not seem to choose goat or fish? What do you say, fish? What do you say, fish? Do you celebrate the Ram goats?
I celebrate the Ram goats.
It celebrates the Ram goats. It celebrates the Ram goats. Well, that is as well, fish, because you see, in that verses where there is a goat and a fence sitter, why not celebrate the goat? Why not celebrate the goat?
The fish celebrate people who choose a side.
Celebration for the ones who choose goat or fish. For the ones who choose goat or fish. Now, look before you, goat and fish. Look before you, goat and fish. Now, the ones, they are listening to the Goat vs. Fish podcast. Fish, what do you see? What do you see before you?
I see a mighty verse, a 3x3 verse, with a verse block in the center.
What do you see, goat? What do you see, goat?
I see circles with verses in the middle. I see 9 circles with verses.
Here where the land meets the sea, there are 9 verses. There are 9 verses. This verses. In some of these verses is a goat. In some of these verses is a fish. In some of these verses is a pitiable fence sitter. You shall each choose 3, 1 verse at a verse, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And we shall see. We shall see if there are more goat or if there are more fish. If there are more goat, the goat do triumph. If there are more fish, the fish do triumph. It does not matter if the goat chooses a fish. If the goat chooses a fish, it is a versus for fish.
Fish!
But as a goat, you must try to recognize the goat that is within, and fish, try to recognize fish. The first goat or fish to say goat versus fish shall do the first choosing.
Goat vs. Fish!
It was the fish!
Fish! The versus begins!
Fish, are you ready for your first choosing?
I am ready.
Then choose.
I choose this verse.
Yes, then find out what is within the verses. Find out what is within the verses. What is it? What is it?
It is a fish verse!
It is a fish! It is a fish! The fish has chosen fish! The fish has chosen fish! Fish, how does it feel to choose fish?
The power of the sea is on my side. I have been guided, and I knew it would happen on this mighty verse.
It is a fish! It is 1 fish from the fish! Hold on to that fish! Hold on to that fish! Goat, the fish has chosen fish. Are you ready for your first choosing?
Yes. Yes, I'm ready.
Then choose your verses.
It is fish.
It is another fish! It is another fish!
A glorious day for the fish!
What do you say? What do you say, goat? You have chosen another fish.
I say there's 2 little fishes among all these mighty goats. I am not worried. There are plenty of goats down there.
Plenty of goats remain, and plenty of goats do remain. Fish. Do you think you will choose a goat on this choosing?
I think the fish will be on my side.
You are with the fish.
I am with the fish at all times.
But you must choose. You must choose.
Goat!
It was goat! It was goat! It was goat! We come back to the goat. Goat, how did you know that fish would choose goat?
Because the goat was lurking in the shadows and he popped out and he came out just in time.
Just in time for the verses, just in time for the verses. What has happened, fish? What has happened, fish?
It is a lesson that the mighty verse is teaching the ginger fish to only become stronger.
You are very wise in your verses. You are very wise in your verses.
Yes.
Goat, it is time for your second choosing.
Yes, I'm going in right now. I will pull out the almighty goat. Oh no, it's a fish.
It was a fish! It is a fish! Oh, it is a fish!
A dirty, rotten fish.
Now, all three fish have been chosen. All three fish have been chosen, but there is a goat. There is a goat. What do you say? What do you say? Can you match these fish? Can you match these fish?
Yes, the goat will come out and show everybody that the goat is the one winner.
Now, if the next choosing is goat, then the goat are still in the verses. But fish, if you choose a fence sitter, then it is not a goat. You could enlist the aid of the fence sitter, or at the very verses that it is not a goat, to help you to triumph this verses.
I will triumph.
Yes, yes. But we shall leave it to the goat. We shall leave it to the goat. Goat!
Yes.
On this choosing, you see goat. A fence sitter will end the verses for you. Do you wish to make the choosing, or do you leave it to fish?
I will leave it to fish.
The goat leaves it to fish. Oh, what a shameful verses it would be if it chose goat, if it chose goat. Unless it is the fish that seeks verses, always seeking verses of goat. It is time for your choosing. It is time for your choosing.
Let us choose. 'Tis a fence sitter!
Fence sitter! Fence sitter! Fence sitter! What do you say, fence sitter? What do you say, fence sitter? Oh, fence sitter who wishes to speak on the Goat vs. Fish podcast, what do you say now that it is a fence sitter in this verses? Yes, yes. There is no good or evil, only goat and fish. Away with your false verses! False verses! False verses! False verses. There are three fish. There are three fish. There is a goat, so it is goat versus fish. And there is a fence sitter. But there is still the honor of the goat. There's still the honor of the goat, the mightiness of the goat, the strength of the goat.
Yes.
Are you ready to choose? Are you ready to choose yet another goat, or will it be fence sitter? What shall it be, goat? What shall it be?
I shall choose another goat. Oh, fence sitter.
Final verses. Fish. 3 fish. Goat. 1 goat. And pitiably, 2 fence sitters, 2 fence sitters, 2 fence sitters. The fish, the fish, the fish do triumph. The fish do triumph over the goat. The fish, the fish, the fish do triumph. The fish do triumph over the goat. Fish, you have triumphed this versus. You have triumphed in this mighty versus of goat versus fish. What do you say? What do you say?
The all-powerful fish on this great verse has been on our side the entire time. There were tests and tribulations as goat did appear and proved an admirable adversary. But the mighty ginger fish does not lose.
Goat. Goat. It has been a mighty versus. It has been a mighty versus. But the fish did triumph. What do you say, goat? What do you say, goat?
I say everyone has their day. All right, the sun shines on anyone just once. Okay, and today he did win and conquer. But the goat will be in training and will come back even more fierce and powerful than ever. The goat does not back down. He will be back. Ha 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 ha!
Ha 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 ha, said the goat, laughing at the fish. Oh, you have triumphed because you are near the sea, but the goat will train, the goat will come back to versus you fish. Will you be prepared? Will you be prepared?
A ginger fish is always prepared for the mighty verse, as it was trained to be.
Always prepared, always prepared. Celebrate yourselves for this verses of goat versus fish. fish. Tell us of your greatest triumph. Think back to all of your verses past, perhaps even before you knew you were a fish. What is your greatest triumph? What is your greatest triumph, fish?
My greatest triumph was bringing together fish and goat, where we can live in a land of goat versus fish, where the verse is a true verse of unity. And that is how we all win at Goat vs. Fish.
The unity of GoatVsFish, the unity of GoatVsFish has been spoken of this verses by the fish. You seek the unity of goat and fish?
I seek the unity of goat and fish as a true ginger fish leader.
Perhaps easy to say, fish, after your triumph of goat. Yes, triumph over goat for the fish. Goat.
Yes.
Alegria's goat.
Yes, yes.
Tell us of your greatest verses, your greatest triumph in a verses.
Oh, my greatest triumph is very... It's a story that's been told for many generations.
Just like goat versus fish.
Yes, passed down from goat to goat. Many goat families know about our battles, our conquers, our wins against all the fish in the oceans.
Regale us of that verses, that mightiest of verses.
We triumphed like 300. That's right.
You triumphed over 300 fish?
No, we triumphed like 300. The movie.
And is that... it is a moving visage. It was a verses of some verses?
Yes, it was the Persians against some other people that lost. 300. You remember the movie.
Was it goat versus fish? It was goat versus fish. It was goat versus fish?
No, it was a different breed of people. But Goat is very powerful, and he's been through many battles, and he knows he'll be back.
Yes. Goat versus fish understands. Yes, you witnessed that versus, and though it was not between goat and fish, of course it must have been between goat and fish because all things are goat versus fish.
Yes.
But you witnessed that versus, and you took those verses and made them your very own and triumphed as a goat.
Yes.
Celebration. You have made it more goat versus fish. Both you, goat, and fish are making the verses more goat versus fish. All the verses. Celebration.
Celebration.
Celebrate the verses on this great verse with the reigning champ, the fish.
The ginger fish.
The fish!
Now, goat versus fish has become concerned. Now, goat versus fish has become concerned. Now, I know we are here to celebrate goat versus fish and to be goat versus fish. But there is one about which the ones are speaking of very much this verses. And goat versus fish would be remiss not to speak of it. It is calling itself Trump. And it wishes to build a fence. It wishes to build a fence for the fence sitter to sit upon. To divide the goat from the goat that cannot properly versus the fish. Goat versus fish has asked it on the Twitterver. You know, you can at real Donald Trump ask it if it is a goat or a fish on the Twitterver. Yes, on the Twitterver. And follow goat versus fish. But now, this fence sitter has escalated what would be its verses if it could even truly verses. It has not chosen goat or fish. And it is saying it must build the fence. At all verses, it must build the fence. It would shut down the very verses itself to have its precious fence.
Yes.
Fish, what do you say? What do you say of this mighty fence? Of this mighty fence that this one wishes to make a fence?
The fish believe in swimming freely. And on this mighty verse, and on every verse, we do not support a fence sitter. You must choose a side, and that side, as the fish builds its school is about inclusiveness. No fence-sitting. Pick your side and triumph in this mighty versus.
And Goat, what do you say? You may say whatever you wish. Say whatever you wish. How do you truly feel about this fence? About this fence?
This world was not created with fences. This world was created with sand, ocean, trees,
Goat.
fish. No fences. And this fence is just a distraction to keep us distracted against all his other criminal acts that have to do with Russia and lying and lawyers and paying off porn stars. This fence is merely a distraction. Hey, look at the fence and don't look at the prostitutes he's having sex with. Look at the fence and don't look at the Russian relationships he has. Look at the fence and don't look at all the illegal things he's doing. It's only a distraction. The fence is merely a distraction.
The fence is a distraction. The fence is a distraction. Now, GoatVsFish does not know all the verses that this goat has been speaking, yes? But it is so that the fence is a distraction from the verses of GoatVsFish. Whenever you look upon the fence, whenever you sit on the fence, you are distracted from your verses. Focus on your verses. Focus on the verses before you choose goat or fish. Be that goat. Be that fish. Fish, what is a tree? That one spoke of a tree. Is it a tree, a goat, or a fish?
A tree is actually a fish.
A tree's a fish.
A tree is a fish. It is more connected to its environment than a goat would be, so it must obviously be a fish.
A tree is a fish. Now, goat and fish. There are many places of podcast, yes, but here, out in the open verses, where the land meets the sea, this is GoatVsFish. Fish, what do you think of having these verses here? Here, out about in the verses. How do you feel, Fish? How do you feel, Fish?
It keeps the verse honest by being out in the open, and it is a great place of unity for the fish to join the goat where the land meets the sea, and we can become one. And the ginger fish supports that.
Goat, how does it feel to be here? To be here!
To be here on this beautiful land where the goat runs free without fences. Digs his paws, his hoofs into the sand. He knows he's home. I see palm trees, which is a part of the land. I see mountains that I could climb and walk through. A nice cool breeze. Wonderful on this beautiful Monday, which is Martin Luther King Day. He had a dream, just like all the mighty goats. We have a dream we could run freely with all kinds of different goats. Black goats, white goats, green goats, brown goats. We are all goats. And we run together on this beautiful day.
They are goats. They are goats. Even if they call themselves a black goat or a white goat, there is no black or white, there is only goat and fish. These are the opening verses of GoatVsFish. But if it knows that it is a goat, then it may call itself any kind of goat that it wishes, or a fish, or a fish, or a fish. Let us sing a celebration. Let us sing a celebration of GoatVsFish. A classic verses you know. A classic verses you know. Come around the verses. Come around the verses. Goat versus fish. 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 Fish! If the ones wish to communicate with this fish, to ask it about its triumph, or to hear about your comedic verses, how do they communicate with this fish?
You can find this ginger fish on the verse of Instagram at ginger_Drew. You can also find his triumph, Ugly Stepchildren, at the Ugly Stepchildren, or his last verse at LOLGBT Comedy Show, all on the gram of Instaverse.
Celebration for fish, celebration for fish. Bloop, 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 bloop. And goat, how can they find this goat if they seek this goat?
You could seek this goat at his house, which is called the Workaholic's House. Go to workaholicshouse.com for all the information of the show. February 16th is the next one. You could find the goat and the almighty comedians performing at workaholicshouse.com.
Final verses, final verses.
It has been a glorious verse this day, and I appreciate the verse that has just been had. My victory has been sweet, but remember, it is all about the verse itself. That is what the verse is about. I look forward to many verses in the future and hope to see you at Ugly Stepchildren the first Saturday of every month, where GoatVsFish has been and shall return.
GoatVsFish shall return, GoatVsFish shall return. It is an ugly verse, it is an ugly verses.
Ugly verse.
Final verses, goat, final verses, goat.
Yes, the fish put up a good fight, and he did conquer today. But it is only one day, and the goat is resilient, and he will be back stronger and more powerful than ever. You shall see the goat again. He will be back.
And the fish did triumph, and the fish did triumph. But the goat would be back, said the goat to the fish. Hear it, hear it, hear it on the next verses of GoatVsFish. On the Instagram, on the Twitterver, on the Book of Faces, all at GoatVsFish, all at GoatVsFish. And when you are out where the land meets the sea, look about you, look about you. Find one who is lost. Find one who does not know the way. And ask. Simply ask, are you goat or are you fish? Bloop, 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 bloop. Let us ask as one. Let us ask as one. Are you goat or are you fish? These are the verses of GoatVsFish. I am GoatVsFish. The goat fish. And it was written, and it was written.
Ah, yes. It has been written.
Now goat, now goat.
Yes.
Now that it has been written, goat. Now that it has been written.
Yes.
GoatVsFish has heard that you have witnessed that false versing bird versus bear, that you have seen the one calling itself bird versus bear. False verses, false verses.
Ah, yes.
What can you tell GoatVsFish of this false versing bird versus bear?
Oh, very powerful. Very moving. Very entertaining to the masses. You must check out the bear versus bird.
Ah! Must they? Must they?
Oh.
Why must they see this one? Why not only GoatVsFish? Should it not be only GoatVsFish?
No, no, no. There's others. There's other powerful creatures and verses, and you shall see them all over. Maybe at the Foxfire. Maybe at the Scene. Maybe at the Workaholics House. They're out there, and you should check them out.
Well, if you are bringing the one called bird versus bear to these places, to these comedy places, well, GoatVsFish does not know what to think of this goat. Does not know what to think of this goat. What of you, fish? What of you, fish? Would you be welcoming one that is calling itself Bird versus Bear to your verses, the false verses that is Bird versus Bear?
As a fish, a bird versus bear would be quite intimidating, but would be willing to. I have not met Bird versus Bear, but I've heard rumors of Bird versus Bear. He seems very intimidating. And as long as my school of fish are with me, I would welcome an open discussion with Bird vs. Bear.
Yes, well, you will not have it. The verses of that one is so close. It is so close to Goat versus Fish.
Yes. The Goat vs. Fish seems to be more powerful.
Yes. Yes.
It is a true verse.
It is the true verses. It is the true verses. But whatever your verses of that fence sitter, you both have welcomed Goat vs. Fish to your verses, and Goat vs. Fish forever celebrates
Yes.
this Alegria's goat and this ginger fish.
Yes.
Celebration!
Celebrate!